Okay, so what if Aaron Rodgers is 41 years old? He'll be 42 in December. Doesn't matter. His proponents will say he started actually, all 17 games for the Jets last season. Let's take a little bit of a closer look, though, at that scenario. Good morning to you. Good Friday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Steelers. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into hockey and or baseball, I also offer daily shots of Penguins and Pirates in the same place that you found this. One of the predominant thoughts that I had at the time the Steelers brought Mason Rudolph back was that he's a really good chance he's going to be the starter regardless of any summer scenarios, for the plain and simple reason that the other guy's old. But when you think of Rodgers and his participation of late, and specifically of his time with the Jets, you think of two things. One, he had the awful Achilles injury, 4 snaps into the 2023 season, cost him the whole thing, tried like hell to come back, wasn't able to. And then this past season, it all seems to get very tidily encapsulated into just looking at the GP column and his stats. 17, there it is. He bounced back, he held up. Well, here again, I have a feeling this has more to do with that trait that I was just giving him credit for, which is that he really, really wants to play. He's adamant about it, and he has taken it to extremes over the years, including this past season with the Jets, of resisting getting certain scans done because he just didn't want to even find out if there was something wrong. Now, hats off for this, all right? This is what everybody would want in a professional athlete, regardless of how much or how little they're paid, how important or unimportant they happen to be to their respective teams. That's part of what's made Rodgers so great over the years. That's part of what's made Rodgers a 4-time MVP. However, in doing some research on this subject, I was able to go through information that was accrued by people who cover the Jets on a daily basis. When I say that, I always mean the people who are actually covering it, not the quote-unquote national types, the ones who are actually there, kind of like the stuff that we do here with the Steelers. The consensus among these is that Rodgers was dealing with, count them with me, hamstring, knee, and ankle injuries, all of which were impacting his performance, most of which were popping up on occasion on injury reports, but he would still end up starting the game that Sunday regardless. For example, after a Week 4 loss to the Broncos, Rodgers stated publicly that his knee was a little bit swollen. Never really went further than that. The hamstring thing I mentioned was, by all accounts, significant. It was something that really was visibly hampering him. But all he did when that came around was walk around the building and say to everybody who was worth telling, quote, "I'm playing," end quote. This is all in the same 1-month span, by the way, capped with a low ankle sprain that he sustained against the Vikings. He played on it, struggled through it. By the time they got to Acrisure Stadium and faced the Steelers, Jeff Ulbrich, who was the interim coach at the time of the Jets, said publicly that Rodgers' hamstring had, quote, "flared up," end quote. Now, this kept going. This didn't get better. Other issues came up along the way. And one more time, for emphasis here, there isn't a tiny trace of criticism in what I'm saying. It's exactly the opposite, in fact. That team was so terrible and so far out of everything that no one anywhere, even in that market, would have breathed a negative syllable had he just said, "You know what, to heck with this, I'm just shutting down. I got nothing to gain from this. Let the Jets see what they have in some other guy or whatever." And he didn't do that. But at the same time, this is what happens. This is just the norm for athletes when they get to 40. Yes, of course. Sports medicine, sports conditioning, even sports commitment in a way has changed over the years so that it's no longer seen as completely outlandish whenever, even a Tom Brady goes and wins a Super Bowl in his 40s. But it doesn't alter, the human physique or what goes wrong a whole lot more easily than it does when you're younger. And the time to recover from an injury or a pull or a strain, and the degree to which that alone impacts you when you're on the field. According to one of these New Jersey-based beat writers, Rodgers did not appear to be 100% at any point in the 2024 season. He struggled in the pocket, and he showed physical restrictions. That's their words, not mine. Could he overcome all of that? Sure. Could he outperform anyone else who's available? Of course, he has that pedigree. Are the Steelers taking one hell of a risk by putting a significant, huge, potentially, amount of cap space into him? Well, yeah, that too. But I want you to think about this too. Doesn't mean you have to agree with me. Doesn't mean you ever have to agree with me on anything that I say. And the same goes in the other direction. My belief is that Mason Rudolph's going to end up starting more games than Rodgers does anyway. And taking that further, I believe that Rudolph's going to have the biggest chance of his NFL career to really establish himself in everyone's eyes, including Mike Tomlin's, that he's a starter. A real live take your team through the whole season and into the playoffs again starter. But my further belief within that same chapter, I guess, of all this is that the Steelers would be stronger if that individual was your starter from the outset and they could run the Arthur Smith preferred offense for which Rudolph is an absolutely perfect fit, instead of having to, once again, switch everything up at a moment's notice after whatever, week 3 or 6 or whatever. Nope, they're going to do it this way. When we come back, J1Q. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George is a personal injury law firm in Western Pennsylvania that represents injured people in automobile accidents, workers' compensation cases, and medical malpractice claims. The attorneys at Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George pride themselves in doing what they say they're going to do. It's important to them that when they make you a promise, they keep that promise. And this law firm has been keeping promises for over 80 years. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has been AV rated. That's the highest rating a law firm can receive for legal ability and ethics. And the lawyers at the firm have been designated super lawyers, that's a real thing, for over 15 years. Rare combination there. Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George has offices in Cranberry, Newcastle, Beaver Falls, Butler, and Elwood City. Learn more about them at lgkg.com or by calling 888-842-5454. Again, that's 888-842-5454. Time now for our J1Q. That comes from Mark Lewis. I love this one so much. Mark says, DK, I was listening to your Thursday show while walking our dog, and I was smiling at something that you said as I was approaching a walker on the opposite side. He was wearing earbuds and smiling also. We both were wearing Steelers sweatshirts. He stopped me and said, DK too? And we ended up having a great conversation about Aaron Rodgers and the potential good or bad it could have with him as the quarterback. Thanks for doing a great show. Thanks for the beautiful note, Mark. I pictured this happening in my head, and it's mind-blowing. It really is. But I'm going to tell you what else I pictured in my head. And that's the two of you just having a civil conversation about Rodgers. I noticed that you didn't mention, what your stance is on it. You didn't mention what the other individual's stance was on it. Yesterday, I took a little bit of a walk myself. After I do the live shows, the double shots in the afternoon, I do those at our downtown studio. I'll almost every time head out to the sidewalk and either kind of just pace back and forth a little bit, getting some fresh air, or lean against a bike rack or something. And as I was doing this yesterday after the double shot, an older lady walks by in front of me, and I do mean walks by. She goes right past me. And then she stops and she turns around, and I don't know that I've ever seen her before in my life, but she says, "I know how you feel about Rodgers, and I just got to tell you, I hope you never sell his jersey in there." And she's pointing back into our shop. Our studio and shop and headquarters are all one thing. And I laughed a little bit and said, well, there's no danger of that. We actually don't sell any jerseys. We sell T-shirts and hoodies and stuff like that. But I wanted to hear more. And she was heading to a nearby bus stop, and I just asked if I could walk with her and hear what she had to say. So I did. And the case that she ended up making, and I respect this, she wasn't going to get into, all kinds of inside football stuff and, next gen stats and film study and whatever. She's just a football fan and a Pittsburgher. And I was curious what she'd come up with. And what she brought up was general, but in a way that you can really respect, especially from someone older, in putting forth that I just don't feel like he's going to be a fit for Pittsburgh. And I didn't know if she meant the Steelers or the city or who we are or whatever. So I asked, and she said, I don't think any of it, really. And she said that she kind of felt the same thing about Russell Wilson last year. She gave him a chance and never really felt that he was genuine. And she just wants somebody that she can get behind. So when I asked her if, there was anything, about Rodgers' personal past or opinions or stuff like that might have had any impact on her, she's like, no, I'm not even really aware of that, which is good because I'm not either. So I wouldn't have been able to carry that conversation very far. But she just described it as a feel. She wants to have someone playing the most important position for her football team that she feels will be all in, just the same way that the city of Pittsburgh itself is all in with the Steelers. And I'm not going to lie, I really didn't have much to say in return. I thanked her for her time, wished her have a nice day, and went back to the shop. I do know that we didn't, get in each other's faces or get hostile over it. It's just opinions on a quarterback. And I hope that your experience with your Walker friend, Mark, was no different. On this program, over the past couple of weeks, I've heard from people who say, DK, this is the greatest show you've ever done. Oh, I just couldn't agree more. This is just pure gold. Best episode ever. And I hear from people who think it's the worst thing they've ever heard, can't stand it, don't want to put up with it anymore, are going to take a time out or whatever else here. And I got to tell you that I equally disregard both of those. And I say that with respect for those opinions, but an awareness that I've still got to come at you with my own. I'm not trying to get you to change your mind. I'm not trying to turn people on Rodgers or whatever. I'm sharing with you what I think. I'm not suggesting that it's more important than what you or anybody else thinks. All we're doing here is talking football, just like you did, Mark, with your neighbor, and just like I did with that wonderful older woman yesterday. Can't tell you how much I appreciated this note. Gave me the idea to finish like this for the week. I appreciate you, Mark. I appreciate the Walker. I appreciate the old lady. I appreciate everybody who listens to Daily Shot of Steelers. We're going to be back with another one of these on Monday.